Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another one of our Facebook Live videos. I apologize if we had a bit of a false start there. I can't tell if we did or not, but it looks like everything is rolling just fine now. And this is going to be hopefully a very useful discussion for you, definitely an important one. We've been talking to you about our reader survey for the last more than a week, and one of the questions on there, a couple of them actually, really dealt with your mental and emotional health during the COVID-19 pandemic. You can see those complete survey results. We've posted them over at siouxfalls.business, but we thought this was a good day to learn more about the resources available, to take stock, big picture, about what one of our terrific community partners has been seeing there. They're on the front lines of a different sort at Helpline, or 211 as you might know them, taking calls from people who need access to a wide variety of resources. We're going to be joined by their CEO momentarily, but first, bear with me because we're about to try something new, and you know me and my technology, we never know exactly what's going to happen, but I'm going to attempt to share a video with you that will hopefully detail what the Helpline Center is all about. So let's see if we can make that work here. Oops.
The Helpline Center is a nonprofit organization, so I am the CEO and run the day-to-day operations, but we ultimately have a board of directors that provides guidance and oversight over the whole operation.
Yeah, no, good idea. Didn't quite work. It's my internet speed. Unfortunately, that's the problem with that, which is why that wasn't playing super smoothly. So what I'm going to do instead is we'll put that one in the comments. And speaking of the comments, I want you to be sure and ask your questions during this because there are a lot of those out there, I suspect. So here we go. You can watch that afterward. Hopefully it shows up. Otherwise, I will add it later on. Yeah, there it is. But it really is a nice video overview of what they're all about over at the Helpline Center and how their staff has been really delivering some needed resources to the community throughout this unprecedented time. So with that, and if those of you who are watching could let me know on the audio here so I can make sure. I'm going to bring in Janet Kittams. She's the CEO of Helpline Center. Hi, Janet. Thanks so much for being with me today.
Absolutely.
Okay, viewers, I need your help. Give me a like or tell me if you can hear Janet okay, because I think you can. But again, I'm getting a little bit of indication that we might have an issue there. So I'm going to roll right into it, though. And a lot of people, I'm sure, Janet, have heard of 211, right? But maybe they only have a bit of an idea of what you do. Maybe they have very little idea of what you do. Whoever gave me that like, I'm going to take that to mean you can hear us. So thank you. Let me know if you guys have any issues. There's another one. I'm just fishing for it. 4. We're up to 4. This is going well. All right. Thanks, everybody. Again, please do ask your questions for Janet. So let's start big picture, if we can, with what exactly 211 is and what kind of services you offer, both more broadly during, I'll call it normal times, and then more recently during these COVID-19 times.
Sure. The 211 phone number is available 24 hours a day for people to call during normal times for community resource information. And we have a database of like 4,000 programs and agencies that we can refer people to. So it might be a question about a human service need, food, clothing, shelter, or it might be a question about a government resource such as where do I register to vote. And then we also take calls through people who just need to talk. We do listening support and we do crisis phone calls, suicide, domestic violence, child abuse. All of those kinds of calls were available 24 hours a day. We are not quite yet statewide across South Dakota, but we're getting there in the next couple of months.
Okay, great overview. Sometimes in the media, I feel like 211, I feel like the Helpline. We get all kinds of questions, and I have been known to send them your way because it's so important to have that community-wide resource where they are that connected. One of the things with my reporter hat on, even when I used to work in city government, that I always valued about the Helpline Center was how you could use the calls to the Helpline Center to gauge the needs of our community. And that's something that Helpline Center does a great job tracking and reporting on a regular basis. But I'm going to talk now specifically as far as COVID-19, Janet, what are some of the more common issues that you are seeing come through 211?
Sure. The calls have really evolved over the past 6 weeks with the COVID-19 issue. I think when it first hit, when we had our first positive case in South Dakota, we received a lot of phone calls with questions about wanting to know more about the virus and what the symptoms were and how did they keep themselves and their families safe. So that was the first couple of weeks, and then it transitioned after that. Then we began seeing a lot of the economic impacts. People were losing their jobs, hours cut. And I think we saw the personal economic impact, and people were reaching out for basic needs such as food or rental assistance, any kind of assistance to help pay utilities, things that they had never had to reach out for previously. Most of these folks are new to receiving help, so we really had to step up and make sure we had resources to provide for those folks. You know, I think the other thing that's been underlined with a lot of the calls that we received is, as we all feel it, that just sense of we don't know what's going to happen next, uncertainty, and a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear about that. And so we'd get calls about people who just needed to kind of talk through that. Sometimes people were very tearful and upset about that. And some other people reacted very differently. They reacted very angry. We had a lot of callers that were upset with what government was doing, what government wasn't doing on all levels, and they just kind of needed to vent and share that experience that they were having or that feeling that they were having. So I think we've kind of managed a variety of calls over the past couple of weeks.
It definitely sounds like it. If only it were as easy as calling 211 and finding out what's going to happen next. If you figure that out, I'm going to call, okay? Because what do you even say? Other than, as you said, to try to talk people through it. And does there come a point where, I mentioned our reader survey, so I'm going to bring that in now. And we asked our readers, since COVID-19 started, have you felt loneliness, anxiety, or depression? And 47% of our respondents, and we had nearly 900 respondents, said yes, they had. And I don't know what I expected. I never really go into these things with expectations, but one, that's a lot of people who are being pretty honest, because sometimes that can also be difficult to recognize or to acknowledge. So if you figure there probably are people out there who've had some of this and said no still, that's a lot of people. But how do you know when it goes from being something that might be a typical human response to something where maybe you need some extra help?
Sure. My staff do a great job of just kind of being there to support that person. And so, they'll talk through kind of what their experience is, what they're feeling, and if that lends itself to, more severe symptoms of anxiety or depression that we feel that that person is experiencing, we'll, jump in and probably offer more referrals to mental health professionals in the community. Or we right now have an amazing partnership with Avera Behavioral Health, where they have offered one of their counselors 24 hours a day that we can connect our callers with if they need to speak with a counselor immediately. So we have certainly taken advantage of that to help people during this really tough time.
Oh, that's very good. Okay. How about, I worry about the population in Sioux Falls. I think about all of the kids who receive assistance with their school lunch program, for instance, and that's just one indicator of people who might be struggling economically. What's your sense as far as how we as a community are supporting that population, and how much, frankly, of that population is experiencing, whether it's food or housing insecurity or other just basic needs that might be going unmet right now?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more of that need in the community than people probably realize, just based upon the calls that we've had. We typically would answer phone calls for people who need food assistance, as an example, but I think those have sometimes doubled and tripled for call volume based upon the need for food. Just in the food distribution that we've partnered with several organizations in town to do on a weekly basis, we've had over 3,000 people that have registered to receive that food every other week through the distribution site at the fairgrounds. So we know the need is definitely out there. And I think the other is just housing. I think we've had a lot of questions about folks that are struggling to pay their rent or also to pay their mortgage. And they just want to know if there's assistance or something to help them get through these next couple of months, because they just aren't sure if their job will be back up and running in a couple of months, if they'll be back at full speed and getting their paycheck again. So I think the need is definitely out there.
Yeah, one of the again stood out to me in that reader survey was 1 in 4 of our readers responded that they did not feel secure about their job. And, whether that's because they're currently not working or because they are anxious that something might happen. I mean, I would think that all just builds as far as the pressure on your mental and your emotional well-being. Are you getting the sense that there is a lot of that job insecurity out there?
Yes, I would say that we certainly have been hearing that from our callers, whether they've experienced their hours being cut, they've been furloughed, or, some companies have reduced the salary of some of their individuals. So I think we've heard from all levels from folks. And then we've also heard from folks, where their businesses are currently closed right now just due to the economic environment. And so they just don't know when it's going to open back up again. A lot of concern from small business owners and then also from those employees that work for small businesses.
One thing that I think Helpline is always great at from a community standpoint is directing us toward those unmet needs. So with that being said, are there unmet needs out there where maybe people who have the means would be able to step up, or businesses that were interested in supporting a particular element of need throughout the pandemic might be able to address? Are you noticing any of those bubbling up?
Sure. I think just from a volunteer perspective, I get asked a lot how people can contribute through volunteering. And I think right now a lot of our traditional volunteer opportunities are kind of on hiatus because of the coronavirus. But there certainly is a need for volunteers, especially with getting out basic needs and food to the folks in need. So if people have time and they're healthy and they're willing to help, the food distribution sites every Tuesday and Thursday at the fairgrounds need volunteers. We are a great partner with Corona Help SF that distributes food boxes to people at their home that are isolated or quarantined and they're not able to leave their home. And I know they always need a team of volunteers every week to help. So I would strongly encourage people, if they have the ability to volunteer, to give back. Those two efforts in town really do need help. And then from a financial perspective, of course, Mayor Tenhagen had stepped up shortly after the Emergency Operations Center was created for this response and created the One Sioux Falls Fund to help with housing needs in the community. So the Helpline Center is part of that Unmet Needs Committee that meets and talks about how we can help people stay housed during this time. And so there's been a tremendous number of donors that have stepped forward for that fund. Some corporations and smaller businesses, and then also individuals have contributed along with the city to that fund. And so that's been a tremendous resource that we have helped so many people with. So I just want to say thank you, first of all, to people who have donated for that. But we feel that the need will continue to be out there for a resource like that, for the housing to keep people housed during the next, we don't know how long, honestly, how long this period will last where people are struggling financially.
Well, that's just it. When you look at how long a fund like this needs to last or how long you need to sustain volunteerism, I would think it would be very difficult to determine that at this point. The Corona Help Sioux Falls effort was fantastic. It was lifted up immediately, I thought. How is that going? Are they able to meet all the demand that's coming in for the resources that they're trying to provide, would you say?
Yes, I think they're doing a great job. I think certainly the need for the volunteers every week is something that they're always asking for help with that. I think they do, of course, accept donations, and so on their website you can certainly make a financial donation, which helps them purchase the supplies, which I think is critical. And I think the demand is going to continue to increase for that program because we're going to have more and more people who are quarantined, who are not able to leave the house. So I think that type of delivery service is going to be very critical to keeping people healthy in our community.
If people want to volunteer for that, what's the easiest way for them to do that?
Sure, they can certainly call 211 and our staff can get them connected, or if you go to the Corona Help SF page, a web page, you can also get connected to the volunteer opportunity.
Okay, a reminder, if you're just joining us, Janet Kittams, CEO of Helpline, is here to take your questions. So if you want to know about various resources in the community, if you want to know more about what they're able to do, feel free to do that. If you're more comfortable maybe just messaging us, messaging our page, we're happy to convey your questions to the Helpline team once we're done with the broadcast as well. But feel free to ask any questions you might have. I'll tackle a difficult one, and I don't know how much you're able to say about this, but there has been a lot of concern, not just in this community, but I think much more broadly about a potential increase in suicides during the pandemic for a wide variety of reasons. You talk to a lot of people who are really struggling at that point. Can you give me any sense of what we're seeing as a community?
Sure. I think I was just looking at some of my data yesterday regarding just mental health needs of our callers and what we call kind of listening support that we're providing to those callers. And so we have seen a dramatic increase in that need with our calls, almost a 40% increase from folks who are calling in that have a kind of a basic need, but also have a mental health need where they kind of need to process that. So we've certainly been managing that every time those calls come in. But I think the other interesting statistic that I pulled from our call records is that our actual suicide call volume, where that call has escalated to the point where there's a required suicide risk assessment that's needed, is actually down from this time last year. If you compare our April numbers to date yesterday compared to the April numbers from last year, those number of suicide calls are down. However, it's only a small amount that they're down, and I'm anticipating over the next month that's going to flip, and we're going to see those suicide numbers dramatically increase. Just even this week, we've seen more of an increase with those suicide-related phone calls.
Okay, so our goal is that we help you, right? If you're struggling with those things, and now it's gotten to the point where it's been a few weeks, and maybe you can't see the future, like none of us can, right? But it's just especially hard to process. You need to call 211. Because the resources are there to help you. And Janet, why don't you help me understand? Let's say I'm one of those people and I'm really struggling with life in general in one way or another, and I get it up to call 211. What's going to happen? What can I expect when someone answers the phone? What's that going to be like for me?
Sure, absolutely. So obviously we have real live people answering the calls 24 hours a day. So you'll talk with a person, which is always nice. And so we just will spend a couple of minutes getting to know that person over the phone when you call and ask you some questions about what currently is causing some stress in your life, what's happening, what seems overwhelming at this point in time. And, what we do is we go through a whole suicide risk assessment with those callers on the phone. And so what that is really just a conversation. We're going to find out what the stress points are, what the safety availability, the safety plan is for that person, if they have access to family and friends and other mental health providers or medical providers in their life as resources. So once we do that whole suicide risk assessment with that caller, then my staff make kind of a determination if we can put together a safety plan and make sure that person is going to be safe over the next maybe 12 to 24 hours. And if we feel like that, we'll put that plan together and create that with that person in partnership with them. And then we'll do a follow-up phone call with them. Sometimes that's within 12 hours, sometimes within 24 hours to continue to check in with them. Probably about 20 to 25% of the time, we have a caller where they're in immediate danger. Like we need to get them help right away. So in those cases, what we're going to do is we're going to partner with our local law enforcement, whether that's here in Minnehaha County or in a surrounding county across the state. And so we're going to partner with law enforcement to go immediately to wherever that person is located to provide support to them to get them the help that they need.
Okay, right. So that help is going to be there no matter where on the continuum you are. But the big message here, Hank, is just a call. So no matter where on this whole spectrum you fall, whether you're struggling a little or a lot, or for you a little or a lot, I think the takeaway here is you are far from alone. Again, I point to that survey. Pretty much half of the people out there are feeling like you in one way or another. They're feeling anxious, they're feeling sad, they're feeling lonely. And that's a whole nother conversation. It's just some of us naturally want to be around people. We want to have more activity than others, and we're really constrained from that right now. Are there any strategies, Janet, that your team is sharing with people, just simple coping strategies that might be good to talk about?
Sure. I think maintaining those relationships as best we can during this difficult time is so important. So that might be a phone call, that might be a Zoom meeting, that might be a Skype call, that might be FaceTime. But I think that is so important to maintain that human connection and interaction. It's going to look a little different now than it has in the past, and you can't reach out and give somebody a hug, unfortunately, which is sometimes what we really feel like doing. But I think just maintaining those connections is so vital to keeping people grounded and feeling like they're not so isolated. I think keeping the social distancing in mind, where we talk about being 6 feet away from folks, it's possible to still have a conversation with somebody when you're that far away, especially when the weather is nice nice outside like that. So, certainly take advantage of that, and have those conversations with your neighbors that are, as they're standing in their driveway and you're in yours, and talk about how they're doing and what the day looks like for them.
Okay, I'm with you on that because that's my personal coping strategy. And, thank goodness that weather's cooperating because it helps enormously you can be standing outside in a safe distance and have what feels like a pretty normal interaction with your friends, your neighbors, and your family. So make sure you are figuring out how to do that because I definitely think it helps. And even the FaceTime helps. I just think there's something psychologically about looking at another person and interacting that way different than text-based or even phone-based, voice-based. I don't know. Our readers gave some good examples too. Those are in the survey story as well. Okay, anything else that you think people just should know about Helpline, Janet, or any other information you think would be valuable for me to put out there?
I think that oftentimes people are in a position right now where they've never had to ask for help. And, sometimes that can be really hard to do. And I would just really encourage people, like you said, Jody, for them to dial 211 and just talk to my staff because there is more help and resources out there than people realize. And I think maybe even just starting that conversation about like, hey, this is what's happening in my life right now. And I'm not sure if there's help, but I just want to reach out and find out. That would be a great place to start.
And here's the other thing, you guys, they've heard it all, okay? I'm willing to bet. You are far from alone. You're not going to be the first person to call 211 with whatever your issue is. They're going to have a plan to help you, and we are so fortunate to have that resource in our community. So thank you for all you do. We're very appreciative. We'll continue to stay in touch with you and your team and help get the word out any way we can about the resources that are available. So I will let you get back to work, but thanks again, Janet, for being with me today, and thanks for all you do. All right, everybody, thank you again for watching. Again, big lineup of video content yet to come this week. Tomorrow's going to be fun. We're talking with Todd Porter. If you're a restaurant person, you're going to want to hear what Todd has to say. Longtime franchisee of several restaurants in the Sioux Falls market. We're going to pair that with a story coming out tomorrow, again from this survey, talking about what restaurants that you think have done an especially good job of adapting their business models. Everybody's really had to change it up. And you had some great things to tell us. So tomorrow's restaurant day. Thursday, we are going to visit with the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Mike Elliott, over at Avera McKinnon. I think it's a good time to check in on how their patient volumes are going, how their surge planning is being executed, and whatever else is new that he might have to share with us there. And then Friday, noon, you're going to shop local with me, the 605 Made virtual market. I got a preview of some of the locally made items that we're going to have for sale. Very excited about that. So make sure you come ready to shop on Friday beginning at noon. We're going to do that for about an hour. I can't wait for that. So again, if you want to look at that survey, you'll find it over at siouxfalls.business. Lots more business news yet to come today. If you are watching this live, stick with us and check back at the website here in probably a couple hours, maybe even a little less than that. When we expect details from Governor Kristi Noem about what she is calling her back to normal plans. So might provide us some sense of when we can expect some of the restrictions to perhaps begin to be lifted here throughout the state. As always, thanks so much for watching, and we will be back with you tomorrow.